Economist Chris Berg is a policy director with the Institute of Public Affairs. Chris, basically the government has to convince the public to bail them out. That's a pretty hard sell, yeah?
It's an incredibly hard sell, and particularly because the way they're trying to convince them to bail them out is through a great big new tax. And this government, while in opposition, spent its entire time talking about how it was opposed to great big new taxes, and now it's trying to impose its own.
But why put this on families? Why can't we rein in spending or ditch paid parental leave? Bang, problem solved. Over to you.
That's exactly right. It is actually sometimes that simple. The government has a bunch of really large spending policies that it is planning to introduce. For instance, you know, there's every indication we're still going to get the compensation from a carbon tax that they are going to get rid of. The idea that we would be being compensated, then extra tax on top of that, seems absurd to me, and I think it will seem absurd to the Australian public as well.
Well, it does seem absurd. It also seems that it's always like the middle class and the PAYGs who are asked to muck in and help their country, whereas we know that there are huge corporations who aren't paying their share. So what about them?
Well, we've got to remember when we tax corporations, a very large amount of that tax eventually gets paid by us because these things funnel down. When it comes down to it, the government wants to extract more money from the economy, and when it extracts money from the economy, ultimately it's going to be extracting money from us. Everything eventually comes back to the basic tax-paying citizens.
My biggest concern here is that Tony Abbott is forcing me to agree with Clive Palmer, which I kind of rebel against myself. But he's saying he's going to block it, the Greens are going to block it, his own party is turning against this policy, and Tony Abbott's busy telling everyone it's not technically a promise broken. How does he mitigate this disaster? It's pretty embarrassing that the coalition is taking lessons in economics from Clive Palmer and the Greens. The problem that Tony Abbott has and the leadership team has is within the coalition, within the Liberal Party, there are people who are saying this is absolutely absurd. The idea that we'd have an expensive paid parental leave system and a giant new tax at the same time is contrary to everything we were promised in the election campaign, and I don't think it's going to go down very well with the parties or the general public.
Do you think there's ever going to be a revolution?
There have been in the past.
Right.
Well, thanks so much for your time, Chris.
No, my pleasure. Thank you.